Selamat pagi, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Selamat datang ke Museum Kesenian Islam Malaysia. Nama saya Allan, saya datang dari University Bristol. Saya sangat berbesar hati hari ini kerana kita dapat bersama-sama kumpul untuk acara yang penting ini. Tapi I hope you understand what I've just said. I think, as you can tell, thank you. But in case you wonder, that's my friend. That's why he's clapping. As you can tell from my accent, I'm obviously not an authentic Malaysian. Does any one of you want to have a guess? What am I? If you know the answer, be silent. Any guess? I think in Malaysia, there's a term called Hongki, or literally meaning orang Hong Kong, okay? So this is a Hongki, authentic Hongki, standing right in front of you. And today is Roundtable, an event that focuses on Malaysian history across national and regional borders. So what the organizers did in the first place was to find a moderator coming from Hong Kong who is now working in the UK to be speaking right in front of you. So back to the more formal stuff. Today's event is a roundtable on Malaysian history, just like what I said. And this is a joint initiative by Imagine Malaysia, an NGO that concerns Malaysian history in the public, and also by the Islamic Arts Museum Malaysia. Moreover, it's a crossover of two events. The first one is the exhibition called Oceans That Speak by the Islamic Arts Museum Malaysia. And as this exhibition highlights how the Malay archipelago became a hub of global maritime trade and intellectual exchange. And today is the final days of the exhibition. So in some ways, this roundtable is also a celebration of the achievement of the exhibition. Second, this event is also part of a campaign by Imagine Malaysia called Malaysia Unbound. And the aim of this campaign is to promote and introduce an inclusive and trans-regional history of Malaysia to the public. This event, or this public history campaign by Imagine Malaysia began back in January 2025 with a public talk at the Malaysia Design Archives, the MDA, given by the person who is now speaking right in front of you. But this person was told that he spoke for too long and too much back in January, and that's why he is not given a chance to be a speaker again, and here am I speaking as a moderator only. But Oceans That Speak, Malaysia Unbound, and as a crossover of these two events, what do we have? As you can see from the backdrop, Oceans Unbound. I'm glad that the organizers are laughing themselves. So this roundtable gathers historians, archivists, curators, and public historians to explore the transnational and transregional histories of Malaysia. And what do we mean by transnational and transregional histories? To put it simply, we are talking about histories that cross and define national and regional borders. And we are talking about or focusing on the movement of people, culture, ideas, goods, and so on. To those of you who've seen the poster, you probably have realized that from the profile of the speakers today, the least important speech that you will hear is the one that I'm giving now. So I should stop wasting time further, and I should explain the format of the roundtable today. So before this session, we have sent 3 questions to all 4 speakers. The first one, what does a trans-regional or transnational perspective mean for your work? whether as a curator, archivist, or historian? Second, in what ways does your work speak to the roles of the other two mediators of history? And finally, what does your work mean to Malaysia? Or to put it simply, why does it matter to Malaysia? So each speaker will speak for around 10, 15, or at most 20 minutes, reflecting on these issues. And after all four speakers or discussants have spoken, we may have some time to respond to each other's thoughts. And at the end, we'll open the floor to everyone in this auditorium for your questions, feedbacks, or comments. And we understand that you may be having some immediate response as our discussants are speaking, but please save your questions and comments for the end of the session during the Q&A. And please, as a reminder, please maintain an inclusive environment and respect our speakers and all members of the audience as you express your questions and views. And a final reminder is that please turn your mobile phones and other devices to silence mode. And it's time for me to introduce the first speaker of today, Loong Dien. Loong is an incoming history PhD student at Yale University. Congratulations, Loong. Before that, she was a Gates Cambridge Scholar at the University of Cambridge, where she graduated with an MPhil in World History. Currently, the president of Imagine Malaysia, a Malaysia-based public history NGO, she is leading the 2025 campaign, Malaysia Unbound, and her current research focuses on a socio-legal history of childhood in trans-regional Asia. So, maybe you can take over the mic and I will deal with this technological advancement. Just speak, I will deal with the...
Hello, testing. At the age of 11, my grandfather boarded a boat bound for Malaya. He was fleeing the Chinese Civil War. Being the only son, he was all his mother had left. His mother had two choices: either let him stay and risk letting the Kuomintang knock on their door and bring him away, or send him away herself. She chose the latter. A month later, he arrived in Singapore. His distant relatives, all already struggling with themselves, already having enough mouths to feed, turned him away. If they took him in, he would be the 11th child in the family. So he had no other choice but to look for this other uncle up north in Perak, where he eventually enrolled in secondary school and found a job teaching the only language that he truly knew, Chinese. By 1957, a decision was presented before him. He could either choose to remain Chinese or take up Malayan citizenship. He chose Malaya because he told himself that he had to keep his teaching job in Perak so that he could save up and eventually bring his mother over to give her a better life. But the problem was in 1978, or before 1978, China was pretty much closed to the outside world. If you were not a government official, a bureaucrat, a diplomat, or a businessman, traveling outside of China was virtually impossible. But still he tried. He asked help from Chinese associations, from state bureaucracies, from ordinary people. He was ignored, dismissed, or worse, scammed. And then news arrived in early 1970s. His mother had passed. He never got to see her again. Mother and son separated not by oceans, but by the hard lines drawn between new nations. His story is not unique. It echoes in many Malaysian families. those who came here seeking refuge, those who came here seeking employment, never thinking to eventually stay, let alone build a future. They paid a quiet private cost for that choice, a cost unaccounted for in textbooks or footnotes. This morning we gather to listen and think about these stories, stories that crossed borders, oceans, and empires, even before the rise of a nation state. Thank you for choosing to spend your Sunday morning with us here, and a heartfelt thanks to the Islamic Arts Museum Malaysia, especially Marina, Naila, Hazrina, for making this space and this conversation possible. My name is Loong, 我姓龙. Hadirin sekalian, silakan panggil saya Loong. I run Imagine Malaysia, a public history organization based here in Kuala Lumpur. And this fall, as Allan briefly mentioned, I'll begin my PhD in history at Yale University. So as someone who studies history, I get asked the same question a lot. Why does it matter? Especially in a world that moves so quickly and forgets so easily. Especially when much of what we call history feels so distant, irrelevant, or even painful to recall. My answer to that is quite simple. Because we use the past to make sense of who we are. In the 2022 film Three of Us, there's a line that stayed with me. Humans make sense of who they are by jumping into timelines of the past, present, and future. We don't live in just one timeline. We carry memories on the past, and then we imagine futures. And those timelines help us decide what is important, what is possible, and what's worth fighting for. But here's the thing. Memory fades, and intergenerational memories even more so. Humans have therefore developed multiple creative ways to transmit a picture of the past to the present, whether on a mother's knee, a recitation, a performance, a chronicle made for the king or queen, or in everyone's case, our school textbooks. But it is impossible to capture a photographic copy of the real world. There's only so much that can be recorded, and only so much that survives. And history, in contrast to what we're taught in school, is not neutral. It's not a set of facts frozen in time. It's a series of choices. It's a story someone chose to tell in a particular time, for a particular audience, against a particular context. The past doesn't survive on its own. It's refracted by the person who records it, by archivists, collectors, publishers, and governments. Even we, as historians, we only write history in retrospect. We don't live in the worlds we study. We imagine them. We imagine how wars happened, how ideas circulated, how empires rose and fall. That's why the word imagined is central to what we do. Because what we call history is not just about the past. It's always shaped by the present. So let me also give you an example. Why does the historical foundation of modern Malaysia, despite all the government changes and with it multiple syllabus changes, still begin with Malacca? Think about it. Malacca, despite its glorious empire, lasted just a little over 1 century. What followed were 400 years of imperial rule by 3 European powers and an Asian one. So why is Kedah still the official starting point of our national story? Why not Kedah, just to take it as an example, Kedah was an older Malay kingdom, a center of Islamic learning, a semi-autonomous state under the British rule, and even more pertinent to the current context, It's a home base for so many of our political elites. Why don't our textbooks begin there? So this wasn't actually a decision made by the post-independent government in 1957. The framing actually goes back much further to British colonial rule, when colonial administrator and scholar Richard Winstead chose Malacca as the starting point of the peninsula's history. That narrative stuck even into the 1970s, when the government began rigorous efforts to reshape national identity, especially after the trauma of May 13th. Following the racial riots, the government introduced new economic policies and national culture policies. Malay became the official language of instruction in schools and universities, and with it, a new syllabus was introduced. But this new history didn't challenge the colonial framework. It deepened it. Not only did it keep Malacca as the anchor, it also maintained and affirmed colonial racial categories of Malay, Chinese, and Indian. Furthermore, this history argued that Malays were the base society of Malaysia, while Chinese and Indians were splinter communities, foreign to the region and of secondary importance. This narrative, rather than healing divisions, hardened them. It defined people by their proximity to power, by how native they were. It shaped a national identity built on exclusion rather than inclusion. So again, history isn't just remembered. History isn't just about the past. It's also about legitimizing the status quo. Across Southeast Asia and the rest of the world, nation-centered histories tell one dominant story. They reinforce the idea of who belongs and who doesn't, who is native and who is a newcomer. These narratives are often exclusionary, racialized, and elitist. In India, Hindutva, or the saffron tide, as they call it, is a civilizational populist attempt aimed at rewriting history by eliminating Muslim elements in India. This promotes the idea that there is a true people in India, and it casts Hindus as victims of oppression by invaders. Who are these invaders? First, the Muslim Mughals, and then the Christian Europeans. The Chinese story is not that different. Malaysian Chinese, even those who speak fluent Mandarin, experience a new form of prejudice merely because of our upbringing, background, culture, and dialect. Perspectives like this downplay the experiences of the disenfranchised, of women, of the working class, of migrants, and most importantly, of the mixed and the in-between. They erase connections, cross-border, interfaith, inter-ethnic, that have defined the Malay world for centuries. In Riau, Perlis, and Pontianak, Hadrami Arabs were not outcasts because they did not hail from the Malay world. On the contrary, they became important political advisors, diplomats, and even rulers. In Malacca, Chinese, Arabs, and Indians acted as portmasters of Malacca, and Tamil Muslims were trusted as the Saudagar Raja, or the king's merchant. And to recount Dr. Sumit Mandal's presentation last month here in the same auditorium, among the many prominent 18th and 19th century writers in Malay were diasporas of the Indian Ocean. They were the Tamil-speaking Chulias, the Gujaratis, the Persians, and of course, the Hadramis. Even the kind of land-based worldview that we have now is a very recent construction. What we know about fixed geographical borders, custom controls, and passports are all recent and begin with colonial cartographers. Writers from the Indian Ocean or South China Sea has long regarded the region through vernaculars and frameworks based on the seas and rivers instead of land. The worst of all, I think, is that these national historiographies make ordinary people's past feel distant. It becomes something for exams and not something to fulfill you, to enrich you, or to empower you. So this is what Imagine Malaysia wants to address. We believe history should empower and not exclude. Our project Malaysia Unbound, launched early in January this year, asks a bold question. What would Malaysia's story look like if we didn't begin with the nation state? What if we told you that the world's first Jawi newspaper wasn't published in today's Malaysia or Indonesia, but in Sri Lanka? What if we told you P. Ramlee's iconic films were shaped by Pasi theatre from Bombay? What if we also showed you that the rise of canto pop began not with Hong Kong or Guangdong, but here in Malaya? What if we revealed that the Johor Constitution drew inspiration not just from Britain, but from Japan, and possibly even Siam, which is present-day Thailand? What if we told you that Indian women working in plantations in Malaya joined the Rani of Jhansi regiment in World War II, not out of Indian nationalism, but out of reasons far more complex? What if we told history not through borders, but through crossings, not through categories of native and outsider, but through shared experiences, interaction, and exchange? For every 2 weeks, we publish these short essay turned infographics on our social media platforms. As you can see here, each set explores a new theme: print, popular culture, law, gender, and more are coming: medicine, food, revolution, and architecture. We also get early career scholars whose research involves Malaya or Malaysia to share their work as part of the campaign. So the Ho Cup infographic that you see here is a contribution by Nathaniel Lai, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Cambridge. We prioritize primary source materials: songs, visuals, oral histories, magazines, old letters, and forgotten documents. These documents are collected from archives and communities across Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and the United Kingdom. We do this so that we can show how archives of the past, memories of the past, is never contained by borders. They are scattered, they exist in multiple languages, in multiple forms, but they tell a compelling, complex story of the past when assembled together. So here, this is an interactive learning resource that we created using an open license software. So if you click on the, if you can click on the link, which is linked in our Instagram bio, it is actually a global map, as in you can see all 7 continents. This is software definitely used just for the time being, and it's a visualization that definitely needs more improvement. But the main goal is to help our audience grapple with the vastness of transnational and trans-regional connections that have marked the region. So please, if you are a software engineer or have ideas for how to visualize this better, please reach out to us later. If history is political, then we have a choice to let others write it for us or shape it ourselves. Imagine Malaysia was established in 2016 to empower Malaysians through stories omitted from official histories. In the past, we have visited Malaysia's histories through student activism, through the lens of race, as well as refugees and migration. We have done so through theatre, workshops, and publications. But after 8 long years, our work is far from done. We have yet to scrutinize the very idea of Malaysia itself. And not so long ago, a friend brought to my attention that even the name Malaysia was not created by a Malaysian, but rather someone from the Philippines. In 1932, the Filipino nationalist Wenceslao Hugh Vincent came up with the concept of Malaysia Irredenta to call for the liberation and unity of Malay-speaking peoples. This could be done through creating a Malaysia that stretched and I quote, "from the northern extremity of Malay Peninsula to the shores of New Guinea, from Madagascar to the Philippines, and to the remotest islands of Polynesia," unquote. Why do so little of us know about this? What have we forgotten? Yes, history can be dangerous because it can be manipulated, but it can also be emancipatory because that manipulation can be challenged, rethought, and reclaimed. While we heed the calls of both Malaysian and non-Malaysian historians in the 60s and 70s, while we want to shift away from colonial-centric histories that emphasize on political and military struggles, while we want instead to highlight the social and economic histories of people from below, we also want you to know that the histories that we write will never be perfect. The histories that Imagine Malaysia writes will never be comprehensive. A roundtable like this helps us to engage with you, the Malaysian public, to draw you behind the curtain and to explain what goes into our alternative histories. Our goal is not to write a perfect history, but to write a history that is relevant to you, a history that matters to you. So today, I don't hope to leave you with answers. I hope instead to leave you with questions. Whose story gets remembered? Whose voice is missing? Who wants the story told? We don't need to be historians to ask these questions. We just need to stay curious, stay critical, stay open. Imagine Malaysia cannot write histories about the people without the people. We cannot do this alone. So if you would like to contribute any thoughts, any feedback, any family stories, any family archives, please reach out to us later. We want to hear from you. And with this, let me please pass the stage to Marina, who will bring you on a journey to discover a more expansive Malay world in the past. Terima kasih. Thank you. 谢谢.
All right. Thank you, Loong. But as a moderator, I still have to introduce our second speaker of today. So I have the honor of introducing our second speaker of today, Marina. So Siti Marina binti Muhammad Maidin is a curator at the Islamic Arts Museum, Malaysia, where she has worked for over a decade. With a background in chemistry and pharmacology from University Science Malaysia, she brings a unique analytical perspective to her curatorial work, and her latest exhibition, Ocean That Speaks, Islam and the Emergence of the Malay World, explores how Islamization and intercultural exchanges have shaped the region's cultural landscape. The exhibition also highlights the rich and complex narratives that define the Malay world's place in the broader Islamic and global context. So Marina, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum and selamat pagi everyone. Thank you for coming today. My presentation today is entitled Ocean That Speak, Curating Malaysia in a Trans-Regional Frame. I believe some of you have visited the Ocean That Speak, Islam and the Emergence of the Malay World exhibition. If you have been to the exhibition, you will see that the artifacts such as the wood carvings, manuscripts and textiles show the mobility of material and ideas. For instance, this Aceh Swatau dish, which Dennis chose to be the main poster of this event. So you can see there is a connection between the seat of Aceh, the seat of Mughal Emperor, and the Chinese porcelain. So Malay world, when Islam came, especially in Samudra Pasai and Aceh, might be the earliest one. And the rulers start to copy and got inspiration for the Mughal Emperor seals.